I understood, far too late, that betrayal never enters loudly. It slips in like a draft you ignore until the whole house turns cold. And yet nothing prepared me for the words spoken that night by the man with whom I had shared 6 years of love, plans, and carefully stitched compromises. I returned home exhausted but elated. That afternoon, the company had offered me the position of regional director, a promotion I'd been carving my way toward for years, my salary soaring into numbers that once seemed unreal. I expected Robert to meet me with pride, maybe even quiet admiration. Instead, the moment I stepped inside, his voice split the air. "I don't give a damn if they pay you $1 million a month," he roared, so violently that the glasses on the shelf trembled. "Quit your job." The words were thrown like a sentence already passed. "You'll serve my mother." I froze. My bag slipped from my shoulder and collapsed onto the floor with a dull thump. My voice cracked into a whisper, thin and disbelieving. What did I just hear? He jabbed a finger toward the kitchen, where his mother stood half hidden behind the doorway, watching us with the satisfied calm of someone who had finally bent the world to her will. "Mum said it's too hard for her alone," he muttered. "You're a woman. This is your duty." My mother-in-law's lips curled in a smug smile. "Exactly, dear. You came into our home. You serve our family. A woman should stay at home, not run around offices pretending to be important." Her words struck like cold metal, a familiar sting, the old wound she had been pressing on since the day she moved in. "Are you serious?" I managed. "I worked years for this promotion. This job could secure our future. And you don't care?" Robert stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the light. "I don't care," he said, voice low, controlled, frightening in its certainty. Mum decided. So, it's decided. Quit tomorrow. We're a traditional family. I exhaled slowly and dropped into a chair, trying to keep my breath steady, pushing down the rising pulse of fury. It felt surreal, as if the life I'd built had been replaced with someone else's grim parody. When we first met, Robert was gentle, attentive. I believed, foolishly, that we were a team. But once his mother moved in, it was as if she had sunk invisible hooks into him, whispering poison day after day. And the higher I climbed in my career, the deeper she fed his insecurity. "I'm going to my room," I said quietly. "We'll talk tomorrow. I'm not quitting." His face tightened. "So that's how it is. Showing off?" He grabbed my mug and hurled it into the sink. Porcelain shattered. "You think you're in charge here? This is my house, my rules." His mother chimed in, venom sweetened with false innocence. "That's right, son. Put her in place. She works a little and suddenly thinks she's a queen." I walked past them without a word. Any argument would explode into a war I wasn't ready to fight. Yet. Sleep never came. The word quit echoed inside me like a threat, like a punishment I was expected to accept. I had clawed my way up for years, through sleepless nights, endless failures, relentless effort, dreaming of financial freedom, a home of my own, the ability to support my parents. And now they expected me to surrender it all to become a caretaker for a woman who despised me. No, that wound would not be reopened. Before dawn, while Robert and his mother still snored behind their closed doors, I dressed quietly and slipped out. The cold morning air steadied me. It felt like choosing myself. At the office, my colleagues greeted me with flowers, warm smiles, a chorus of heartfelt congratulations. My boss clasped my hand and said softly, "You earned this. You're one of the strongest women I've ever met." My eyes burned. I hadn't heard words like that in a long time. Still, unease gnawed at me throughout the day, a shadow trailing my excitement. I sensed that the storm at home had only begun forming. And I was right. That evening, when I pushed open the apartment door, Robert stood in the center of the living room, gripping a printout of my employment contract. His posture radiated cold triumph, the kind born from simmering resentment and borrowed authority. "What are you doing with my documents?" I asked. He tossed the papers onto the table. "I called your office. I told them you were sick," Robert said, pacing like a man preparing a punishment. But they said you were at work today, so you've decided not to listen to me. I don't have to quit, I answered, forcing my voice to stay steady. This decision is mine. His fist slammed into the table. The rug shuddered. You do what your husband says. That's how it works in our family. In your culture? I lifted my chin. Not in mine. A dark, frightening flicker crossed his face. Not rage, but something colder. A simmering hatred brought to life. And then his mother appeared in the doorway, arms crossed like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Enough, she snapped. Give me the director's number. I'll call her myself. Let them fire you. A woman who lives off my son should stay at home. I turned sharply toward her, the sting of her contempt lighting an old wound. I don't live off your son. I pay half, often more, and I'm not quitting. She inhaled to scream, but I raised a hand. Stop. I've heard enough. Robert stepped closer, his breath thick with tobacco, the hostility radiating from him like heat from burning coals. You'll write your resignation right now, he murmured, a twisted smile crawling across his lips. Otherwise, his voice dipped, low and poisonous. Otherwise, I'll show you what happens to women who don't obey their husbands. The threat slithered between us, more chilling than shouting. For a moment, I looked straight into his eyes. There was no love left, only possession, bruised pride, and a void craving control. Something inside me tightened, then snapped cleanly. Fine, I said, my tone unexpectedly calm. If you want to talk like that, then listen very carefully. His expression shifted. He sensed it, the shift in power, the quiet rage rising in me like a tide. I'm not quitting, I said, and I'm not serving your mother. I won't tolerate your yelling or your threats. If my job bothers you, that's your burden, not mine. His face drained of colour. His mother screeched something, but her words slid past me like meaningless noise. And tomorrow, I added, I'll file a request, but not for resignation. Silence fell. They stared at me as if I had summoned an omen. Divorce, I said. My mother-in-law's face flushed a furious, blotchy red. Who do you think you are? She shrieked. A woman who finally remembers her worth, I replied. And in that instant, I felt something inside me unlock, as though a door, long bolted shut, had finally fallen open. But freedom, I would soon learn, has a price. And the chain of events I had just set in motion would carve much deeper wounds than I could imagine. I believed, naively, that after hearing the word divorce, they would retreat, that Robert's anger would cool, that his mother would stop dictating the terms of my life. I was wrong. In the morning, when I stepped out of the bedroom, the suitcase I meant to pack was gone. Following the trail of unease, I found Robert in the hallway. My bag lay on the floor behind him, turned inside out, my things scattered like debris after a storm. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't even glance at me. You're not going anywhere, he said, his voice cold enough to frost glass. Not until I decide. His mother appeared behind him, sipping tea as though watching a performance. My son is right. You're not leaving until you sign that resignation. And anyway, she looked me up and down with open contempt. You still need to earn your divorce. A tremor rippled through me. Not fear anymore, but anger, sharp and alive. You both seem to forget that I'm an adult, I said. I have the right to walk out whenever I choose. Robert stepped toward me. Try it. That was the moment the last thread snapped. I picked up my phone with deliberate, steady hands and dialed. Hello, police? Robert's face drained of blood, as if the floor had cracked beneath him. His mother erupted in shrill panic, waving her arms, but I lifted a finger. One more word, I told her quietly, and I'll add threats to the report. 20 minutes later, police officers stood at our door. Robert tried to convince them it was nothing, just a small fight, just words. But then they saw the scattered clothes, the overturned bag, the tension carved into the walls. One of the officers pulled me aside. If you feel threatened, he said softly, you can leave. You can file a report today. It's your right. I nodded. The officers issued Robert a formal warning. My mother-in-law shrieked that I was disgracing their honourable family, but her fury washed over me like rain on stone. I gathered only the essentials, leaving the rest behind to reclaim legally. As I stepped into the hallway, she spat after me, "You'll crawl back. With a character like yours, no one will want you." I paused, turned, and let a small, quiet smile answer her venom. "We'll see." Then I closed the door behind me, not gently, but with the finality of a sentence carried out. I rented a small apartment near the office. It was hollow, silent, devoid of warmth, yet the air in it was mine. For the first time in years, I could breathe without tasting someone else's dominance. The next morning, I filed for divorce. My lawyer assured me that, given the threats and her constant interference, the process could move quickly. When the summons reached my husband, he called, again and again. I let the phone ring until his persistence dissolved into static. "You're nothing without me," he hissed in one of the messages. "You destroyed our family. Think carefully. Once the divorce is final, you'll pay compensation. I won't let you go that easily." I laughed bitterly. His delusion of control was almost theatrical. At the first meeting, Robert sat stiffly beside his mother, both of them radiating hostility like generals preparing a counterattack. "We demand compensation," his mother announced. "She used the apartment we bought. She owes us." My lawyer didn't even blink. "The apartment is registered to your son. Legally, she owes nothing. She has the right to retrieve her belongings. The property belongs to whoever it's registered to. Anything else?" My mother-in-law's face drained of colour. Robert's fists tightened, knuckles whitening, but he said nothing. "And," the lawyer continued calmly, "we have the recording of the threats, confirmation of the police call, and documented interference with personal freedom. If you attempt to obstruct the divorce or demand money, we will file a counterclaim." My mother-in-law hissed like a cornered animal. "A setup. She wants to wring us dry." "No," I said quietly. "I just want to leave. I don't need a single thing from you. Just let me go." For the first time since all this began, Robert lowered his eyes. He knew the war was lost. 2 months later, the divorce was finalised. No scenes, no more shouting, only cold signatures and indifferent bureaucracy. During those weeks, I worked relentlessly, pouring myself into a project assigned with my new position. The workload steadied me. It felt like stitching myself back together. "You're incredibly strong," my boss told me once, watching me navigate both crisis and work with precision. "And everything will fall into place for you." I smiled. For the first time, I believed her. 6 months after the divorce, fate decided to test me. I ran into Robert at a shopping centre. He looked as if something had hollowed him out. Thinner, untethered, worn by consequences he never expected. "Hi," he said quietly, almost ashamed. "Hi, you've changed." "So have you." "Yes," I replied simply. "I'm free." He exhaled sharply, shoulders sagging. I wanted to say, maybe I was wrong. I studied him, but the old hurt didn't flare. It was gone, replaced by clean, unburdened clarity. "You were an adult," I said. "You made choices. Those choices led here." Pain and regret flickered in his eyes. "Are you happy?" I allowed myself a small, calm smile. "Yes, very much." He tried to smile back, but the expression collapsed and we parted, cleanly, like 2 lines finally diverging. That evening, in my quiet apartment, I turned on the lamp, poured tea and walked to the window. The city stretched below, glowing, restless, alive, and inside me, instead of fear or bitterness, there was a vast, steady calm. Not loneliness, but solitude that felt like the sea before sunrise, soft, deep, unthreatening. I had passed through humiliation, threats, attempts to crush my freedom, and yet I had emerged stronger, honed rather than broken. Standing at the window, watching the lights weave through the city, I understood something with absolute clarity. I would never again surrender my life to someone else's rules. Not to a husband, not to his mother, not to fear. My future, for the first time, belonged entirely to me. And that, I realised, was the most fitting retribution life could offer.